I grew up in a Christian church that was very homophobic. And that in itself, like I got these messages from a very young age that there was something wrong with me and I was going to go to hell. When I was in about middle school, my self esteem was at such a point that I would describe myself as short, fat, black, and ugly. One of my relatives saying to me that I was too fat to get a man or whatever it was. And I was like, I was too fat to be loved. I am a survivor of suicide. I was born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri, which is very centrally located in the United States. There's still a lot of segregation and racism and homophobia there. So, growing up in my childhood, I was very depressed.
Are you a happier woman today?
100% much happier. There's a lot that I can talk about now that I couldn't talk about before.
Well, as you all know, I've been talking to pretty much Sri Lankan politicians or Sri Lankan activists or Sri Lankan characters, pretty much 99% of during my show Sandeshaya by Saroj. But I'm here today with an activist from Oakland, California, and I'm very happy to introduce Marnika Shelton.
Hi.
Nika or Marnika is an artist, an LGBT activist, a civil rights activist, and the list goes on. Nika, tell me, what do you do? Who are you?
Yeah. Well, first, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on your show and having this platform. I really have loved getting to interact and know the work you're doing, and I'm extremely grateful for that. Yeah, so I am a classically trained fine artist. I focus on a lot of like social activist work that particularly pertains to, I guess, the historic realm around African American identity. So civil rights, the Black narrative, stories that haven't really been told.
Let me say this. I wanted to speak to Nika or Marnika Shelton because she's such an inspirational character. While I was working with the BBC World Service, I had a couple of long conversations with Nika, and I was myself inspired by her story. Nika, as we know, as we discussed before, you have tried several times, attempted to take your own life a couple of times.
Yeah.
And then, having gone through all this, you are here today. You are inspiring others and you are helping others to live their life or to celebrate their life. Tell me more.
Yes, thank you. So, as you mentioned, I am a survivor of suicide. I was born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri, which is very centrally located in the United States. There's still a lot of segregation and racism and homophobia there. So, growing up in my childhood, I was very depressed. I didn't feel accepted. I didn't feel heard or understood. And there was not any positive representation of who I was that I was able to see. I I grew up around a lot of activism, which was really great. And I think it's important being in the Midwest, and Missouri is like technically the northernmost southern state. So if you know anything about like the Confederate history of slavery, um, Missouri is a red state and was a Confederate state. So the history there is very palpable. Um, I learned to not like myself at a very young age. Um, I think some of the more pivotal moments in my life were people so I grew up like I'm not very tall. I'm like 4'11". I'm dark skinned and I'm pretty hefty in size. I've always been overweight. And so I remember one of my relatives saying to me that I was too fat to get a man or whatever it was. And I was like, I was too fat to be loved. is kind of what that conversation was.
When was
And
that? How old were you?
I was about 8. And it was interesting too, because that not only put this like beauty identity stereotype on me, but it also like put me in this space of like, am I ever going to find love, romance, even the conversations around sexuality? Um, those were really weird for an 8-year-old to deal with. But I learned at a very young age that in the general sense of things, where I was unacceptable. Um, Oh, this is something that I'm actually learning to share. But when I was in about middle school, my self esteem was at such a point that I would describe myself as short, fat, black, and ugly.
You
And
described yourself.
I did, because this was all the messaging that I had gotten over the years about who I am. And there was nothing to argue that. There was nothing really to argue, at least not in me. That conversation, I think it was very.
Nika, sorry to interrupt, but we are still talking about pre-smartphone, pre-social media time, right? Era, right? There were no
What?
smartphones.
Oh, yeah, no, pre-social media. Yeah, yeah. um, Early to mid 90s. um, so yeah, there was. Yeah, I mean, it really just kind of came from internal familial conversations, community. I think there's a lot of beratement of African American people that actually has the general esteem of the people that I grew up around very low. And so it wasn't uncommon. It wasn't at all uncommon for there to be a number of undiagnosed mental health issues, a number of like high rates of depression. I'm very familiar with the conversation around suicide. As I mentioned, I had, and I'm well beyond it now, so which is a good thing. But I had attempted suicide a few times, and when I was growing up, it was also something that I dealt with other members in my family. My mom had attempted suicide a few times, and I actually like walked in and caught her, which was interesting and traumatic experience. And also, I'm glad that I was there, which is kind of this weird dichotomy of experiences. Um, and both my brothers have been in that boat. And so it was almost the norm. Like, in fact, it was the normative aspect of the culture.
How did you come out of it? How
Right.
did you, I mean, what helped you to come out of it?
Exactly. My art. That's been one of the major saving graces of my life. I know I actually started making art when I was 4. And I discovered it as a voice to express what I was dealing with and going through much later in life. So when I got, well, much later than 4, but when I got to high school, I went to a pre-professional arts high school. So there was a visual and performing arts, and I got deep into the realm of sculpture. It was incredibly important for me to be able to have a voice and have that voice be heard. So I do describe myself as a classically trained fine artist, because you don't see that or hear that very often, particularly in the Black community. Like, there's street art and there's folk art, and very rarely do we have the conversations around fine art that really like, this is the conversation of elevating us into spaces where we have been systemically declined. So really being able to tell the stories, and it gave me a voice. It gave me a voice, I think, when no one else was listening or could
But you
hear me.
started at the age of 4, your fine art.
Yeah.
So, and but yet at the age of 8, you said you first had those thoughts, and even after several times, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I remember uh when I was about 8, I had this moment I was very, very upset. Actually, maybe I was 9, and um, there was a lot of trauma.
You said your brothers also went through some similar kind of thoughts. I know your mom also went through. So how did you all come out of it? I mean,
Uh,
there was a support from within the community or from outside the community.
I guess I would say my instructors and mentors, and my dad. I love my dad to pieces. He did everything that he could to make sure that I have the life I do now, making sure that I got education outside of the public school system, making sure that I got, like I had mentors and instructors that were guiding and gearing and steering me towards college. That was very important. I remember when I was 11, he was like, "You're going to college and you're going on scholarship." Like that was the entire conversation, and we didn't have the money to send me to college, so that level of commitment from him was it's actually what drove me forward in the academic world. Um, yeah, in terms of support systems, honestly, I mean, it's kind of weird, but I was the support system for my family. Like, um, given everything that was being gone through, I remember talking with my mom about her divorce from my dad. I remember talking to my brothers about, or my, well, definitely my youngest elder brother. He was in the military, and when he came back, he went through a number of things. And I remember like talking to him, and I still have those conversations now to support my family. But I was, yeah, as the youngest one, actually, people came to me all the time for advice and support and listening. Um, yeah, it actually, I think, gave me the voice that I have. Is
And
like,
years later, Nika,
yeah,
having gone through all these troubles, all these turbulent times, you are the support system for many others at the moment, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Tell me what you do now.
So right now, let's see. So I host a podcast. It's the ItCast Real Talk on Sex. And we focus on increasing diversity in conversations around health and sexuality. So really meeting at the crossroads of race, gender, class, religion, and looking at how all of these things, politics, affect how we operate as humans. And and really connecting dots. So like I've done episodes on like racism in the medical industry, and different forms of health and awareness conversation, historical trauma. I do talk about LGBTQ rights, as well as African American rights, and honestly, it's about inclusion of everyone. Like I really want this podcast to reach and touch everyone globally, because there's so many conversations that aren't being had, and in my opinion, so much pain in the world that no one's talking about or listening to. And I think that in itself really opens a way for healing. Yeah, opens a path for healing.
Nika, now those thoughts and those kind of attempts you had several times, is it because of your race, or is it because of your sexuality, or is it because you felt within a family you had some issues, or what exactly were the reasons?
Yeah, I mean, it was really combined, all things combined. I grew up in a Christian church, Southern Baptist Christian church, that was very that was very homophobic. And that in itself, like I got these messages from a very young age that there was something wrong with me and I was going to go to hell. So, like, that, and then, stacking on top of that, my size and my skin tone, those were like major factors. And ultimately, I had heard so many times that I was bad and I was wrong that I didn't have any self esteem by the time I got to like middle school.
But now we both met each other through Martha Lacroix Taylor, who
Yeah.
runs Here's to Life to actually celebrate lives, to help people come out of this kind of thoughts. Martha is such an inspirational leader. So some of you might have watched my interview with Martha Taylor as well. So, Nika, tell me what you hear from others and what were the response from others when you are working with other members of the community who are going through turbulent times.
Yeah, I get a lot of gratitude. You know, there's a lot of work that I do that's very healing. I do work around ending shame and creating empowerment, empowerment for your life. And so I love Martha. She is incredible. And I did some work with Here's to Life. And actually launched a shame workshop that I provided for them, which was really powerful. And Martha's incredible. I think one of the things that we dealt with in the beginning was like actually integrating conversations around sexuality into the space around like health and healing, because there's a lot of like pause there. But yeah, I think also speaking directly to suicide um and like cultural support and help. Um there's a lot of organizations that I work with that focus on LGBTQ rights and like making sure that youth are taken care of. I also work with an organization that specifically focuses on providing resources for survivors of rape. And so like that, I mean, it speaks to my heart, these different things that, impact how we operate in the world. um, yeah, the organization is the Grateful Garment Project, and they provide clothing for resource closets in hospitals here in California. And we're looking to expand beyond that as well. But, making sure that people who just had a rape kit like go home in a nice new outfit because they often have to leave their clothes. And, for me, it's really about creating diversity there. I feel like um, as a woman of color, like rape is branded in a particular way. And very rarely does it actually represent people who are in bodies of color or non-conforming bodies, and all these people who are at high risk for sexual assault don't necessarily get represented in the conversations around like save people from sexual assault. And I think it's a political perspective on who has the right to be protected.
Personally, are you a happier woman today?
100% much, 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 much happier. There's a lot that I can talk about now that I couldn't talk about before. I definitely don't relate to myself as the person that I used to. And, like the relationship that I had to depression and suicide, like that, I made a commitment to myself. I was in middle school and I was having this major breakdown and I was just so ready to end everything. And I, halfway through my attempt, I actually thought about my nieces and nephews and my family. And like they were so young at the time. And I was like, I want to see them grow up. I want to be there and I don't want to devastate my family with this. It's easy to see it from like, like this is how I'm hurting and this is what's going on for me, but the ripple effect of like causing that pain to spread out for other people and missing out on my life was not something I was willing to do. So I made a commitment to myself and it hasn't been a thought since.
And I'm sure you are happy and glad that you by now, not only that you came through, not only that you came out of those devastating thoughts, and that you are helping, you have helped and are helping many others to come out of this kind of thoughts and celebrate their lives, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've led a number of workshops specifically around releasing shame and, creating empowerment, whether it's in community or within yourself. I've also held a number of discussion groups. A few years back, I hosted or I led. It was Ask an Elder, a conversation, a cross generational conversation around sexual shame. And so, like, we actually pulled people. From all age groups. We had people as young as 4 to people over 80 in this one conversation around the history of, like where we've been in this conversation, the rights we've had, how we've grown, like what opportunities we have now that were created from our parents and our parents' parents, and what's our responsibility to move forward. One of the most beautiful things that was shared was actually by this woman who was in her 80s, and she stood up and she said, "This is so beautiful. I had no idea how much I was going to learn from you." Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
What a remarkable story, and what a comeback. Long may you continue your work to uplift your community and others in the United States, and if possible, in other countries too, Nika. And it was wonderful.
I want to share about the Global Sexual Health and Freedom Summit. It's coming up in February the 4th and the 5th. And what we're doing is we're creating a global conversation of awareness and understanding so that we can be present to how people are living and what's going on with the health and sexuality in these different places, whether it's about, birthing rights, women's rights, just so many major elements of healing. It's really about healing, and I'm very excited to share that with you and with the world. And we really do want to have global inclusion. So if anyone out there would like to attend it, the website is sexhealthsummit.com, and you can see more and RSVP or contact us there.
Thank you very much for having had this conversation with my channel, Sandeshaya by Saroj. And I would like to introduce many other characters, many other people like Marnika. And because I'm interested in her story, as well as others who inspire many more others in our communities. Thank you, and let's meet up again.